Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Now, Felix and I are going to talk to you about something that is very new through, and really, there's a level at which we're still pulling some of the detail of this through. But we wanted to share it with you because it really takes the whole story of what's been going on here to a whole different level. Um, I've started to uncover this since I've been back from the Stargate in France. I feel like it's one of the gifts it's given me, is opening up this whole new layer of understanding. But it really relates to for me, it starts with the fall of consciousness in this universe. And we had the Laran Wars, which was really the first fall of consciousness in this universe, where you've got two races that for billions of years have been getting on absolutely fine, got up one day, got out of bed, and decided that they'd start to hammer each other. They didn't like each other and this, that, the other. And it's kind of like, yeah, but what's the trigger for that? Why did that happen? And I've asked that question a lot and not really I've had a little bit of insight that it was something from outside our universe or our universal structure that actually came in and seeded that event. So, but I hadn't had more than that. Now, I mean, Felix knows it all unpacked very, very quickly over, and I've been deep, deep, deep down this rabbit hole for the last few weeks. So we're going to take you through what we know and understand, what really was the seed event, the trigger event for the fall of consciousness in this universe. And it's a story that goes back a very, very long time ago. I mean, our universal time matrix was put together, started to be created about 950 billion years ago, according to the historical timelines. Now, this all takes place. I think I've put together a timeline for this, but I don't have it to hand. I think it's about 300 and something, 80 billion years ago, something like that. So, our universe had been trucking along quite nicely for quite a long time when this event happened in another area of the multiverse. And we'll try and show you a picture that might help, get your head around it a bit shortly. But there was a race in another multiversal structure, what we would call a neighbouring akasha, and again, we'll hopefully explain that term to you. So it's sort of a neighbouring area. And there was a race called the Barenthesala, and within their Eka world, they saw the fall of consciousness and the implosion of one of their neighbouring Vekas. And they were utterly dismayed by what had happened, by the destruction, by the loss of loved ones from that Veka. Because one of the things that I think we fail to understand is that we're not an isolated universe, and all the other universes are not isolated. We're all talking to one another, or we were way back then. So our universe may have been settling itself down and getting on with the business of being what it was. But there were all sorts of passageways and interconnections, intergalactic family outside it. And it was the same here. So this Veka fell. And so upset were the Barenthesala by all of this, and so devastated by what had happened, they kind of became somewhat obsessed. I mean, they're a Christos race, a Christiac race. But they took a bit of a wrong turn. And this is the point they started to take a bit of a wrong turn, because it's kind of like, well, something's gone deeply wrong here. The crystal spiral, which are the Christos energies, the flows of Christos energy, something has gone wrong at that level. So we need to try and understand what it is, and we need to come up with answers. And between them, they all came up with this experiment, which is when you think about it, absolutely nuts when with hindsight. But they came up with this idea to experiment with fallen consciousness to try and understand how it came about. And they set up something called the victim-victimizer experiment. And they split their race into three parts. One is the control group, the Borenthasala, the control group. And then the two other aspects, one was termed the victim group and the other was termed the victimizer group. And the idea was that they would swap roles, then swap roles again, then swap roles again. So that each of these two groups would have two goes at being victim and two goes at being victimizer. And then and you've got the control group who would, if things got too bad or went wrong, the theory was they would be able to pull these experimentees out of the experiment. And they quarantine the experimentees in order to keep this fallen consciousness, because what they did in order to fall consciousness is they twisted. We have a trimatrix running of energies, or trivecca running of energies, and in order to, fallen consciousness runs on what's called a bivecca, which is it's like the Vesica Pisces. It's a closed loop system of the way energy is run. And so they actually, the people taking part in the experiment were that their energy flows were turned into the bivecca energy flows, and off the experiment went. Well, the first round happened, then there was a swap, and the ones that had been the victims became the victimizers. And when it was time to swap back again, they were like, hell no, we're not going back there. That wasn't a good experience. We don't want to have anything to do with that. And really, I mean, one of the things about the bivecca running of consciousness is it brings in extreme polarities. So they really went kind of like, no, we're in control here. We've been the bosses. We've been the bullies. We've been the controllers, and we're not going back. Whatever happens, we're not going back to being victims again. Which there's a level at which you can have some sympathy with that, but they did know what they were signing up for. And so what did they do? Well, in order to make sure they were never going to be victims again, they killed all of the victim group. So there was nothing to swap back into. They then broke out of the quarantine. They developed various technologies, something called time rip technology. They broke out of their quarantine using this time rip technology, which literally tears through energetic structure, and killed or captured most of the Borenthasala, the control group. So the whole thing became a fallen universe, effectively, on the back of this experiment. But it didn't end there, because then the Borga, as they came to be known, this fallen race came to be known, started to attack the other systems within their Akasha world, until the whole of their what's called their Ekaveka realms were under their control and fallen. And then they moved out from there. They moved to a neighbouring Akasha called Wizala, and took down two of the Vekas there, Vekas called Wizadek and Wizadrak. Felix is bringing up a picture that might help you orientate yourself. The red, where you're seeing the red Ekaveka, that's the totally fallen Borga one. And then the Wizala, a couple of the Vekas, if you look very closely, I mean, it's very detailed in there, but a couple of the very, very tiny little worlds in there, Wizadek and Wizadrak, also became fallen. So Wizala is a semi-fallen Akasha. Wizadek and Wizadrak are fallen. The rest of it is still Christiag. And then we have the Aquinos Akasha there, and we are a universe within that Akasha. I mean, the detail needs to drill down to find us, but it's sort of kind of giving you the big picture of, the amazing expanse of what's out there. So, the rest of the Christiac races in the other universes, the other Akashas and things, weren't taking this lying down. They weren't just sitting back and watching and going, oh, good show sort of thing. I mean, it was clearly very dangerous what was happening, and the Borga were very powerful. They had developed very advanced AI systems. They had integrated themselves with the AI systems. They'd assimilated themselves into the AI systems, and they had worked out how to assimilate other races, other races that they conquered into those AI systems themselves. And the nearest analogy we have, and I find it fascinating that our Hollywood script writers and the like come up with these. I think these ideas are seeded and planted. Is for those who watch Star Trek, the Borg, the creatures, the Borg, who behave in a very similar way to the Borga, and they are terrifying. The Borga are a terrifying race. So several Akashas came together, Christiac Akashas came together in order to try and contain the Borga problem. And this is what's called, when Felix put up that picture, it was called the Crystal River Trimatrix Cooperative, or Trimatrix Host is another word for it. And that was 3 Akashas who came together to try and quarantine the Borga so that they couldn't keep moving out through all the other worlds and creating more and more fallen consciousness. And that was the Wizala. There's still Christiac Wizala. One called Aquarian, a whole Akasha called Aquarian, and there are Aquari races and all sorts who are helping us at this time here from that Akasha. And then there was the Aquinas Akasha, which is our Akasha, and we're within it. We're a semi-fallen Veka or universe within the Aquinas Akasha, and that's the Crystal River Trimatrix Host. And their idea was they had technology called the gyrodome technology, which is a sort of buffer technology, and their idea was to put that in place and contain the Borga. So I mean, what happens with fallen consciousness is it feeds on itself. If it can't find others to parasitize off, it feeds off itself. And eventually, because it's just going around in this closed loop, it eats itself. It basically destroys itself. So give it enough time and the Borga problem would have imploded in on itself if it could have been contained. But there was a major problem when the the Borg were going around using this time rip technology to access other Vekas and things like this. And there's a world at the center of an Akasha called an Eka. It's a little central hub world in the middle of it, and there's a connection because we're very close neighbors. There was a connection between our Eka and the Borga Eka, as there is between our Eka and the Wizala and the Aquarian and so on. And in one of the time rips that the Borga used and put in place, it damaged part of our Eka. So there was a rip in part of our Eka. And if this gyrodome technology had been used, we would have been caught within it because of that rip. So the Crystal River host basically looked at this and said, we can't do that. We can't leave this whole Akasha to the tender mercies of the Borga. So we're just going to have to let this play out and hope that the various races within the Crystal River Tri-Matrix host, and there's a lot of universes within that, and a lot of races within that, including within our Aquinas Akasha. They will develop sufficiently to be able to heal that rip. Then we can put the gyrodome in place. Now, events really outpaced that with Wizala going down, and then the Wizala attacked our universe coming in. They punched a wormhole in here and are behind. We talk mainly, when we talk about the fallen races here, about the Anunnaki and the Draconian, but the Weezer are behind them. They're the kind of like puppet masters behind the puppet masters, as it were. But the way this relates to the fall of consciousness, so we're seeing, the fall of consciousness taking place and spreading like a virus, this victimizer virus, and it is a virus. It's a mind virus. It's a consciousness virus. Once it gets, it's introduced into a race, you get this polarity coming in, and people unconsciously beginning to play out the roles of being the bully and the bullied, or the victim and the victimizer, or the whatever it might be. And it's absolutely rife and endemic within our race now, within our species now. And so the way you take over a complete universe is a little bit at a time. You don't sort of go in with vast legions and take it over. You undermine it. So in order to begin the takedown, because we're food, they view us as food. We're to be assimilated with all of our energy quanta, the energy quanta of all of the species, and the energy quanta of all of the universal structures. Are seen as feeding. They want us to feed them. So they begin with the races where the species were seeded initially within our universe, which was at the top level, what we call Hue 4, harmonic universe 4, or density 4, which are dimensions 10, 11, and 12. And they were called the Lyran races. And at 12, you had races called the Elohim, who were guardians of the 12th universal stargate. At 11, you had the Anu, who were guardians. They were a hybrid race who were guardians of the 11th stargate. And at 10, you had the Omnicron Draconians and the Odedicron, who were Seraphim races, and they were the joint guardians of the 10th gate. Now, covert operations came in here, and in-slipped infiltrators and basically planted the victim-victimizer mind virus between the 10th and 11th dimensional races. And the Anu woke up one morning and looked at the Draconians. Well, they're too stupid. They're not deserving of guardianship of the 10th Stargate. The Anu believed themselves to be so much better and so much more superior and so much more deserving of that guardianship. So they bullied the Omnicron Draconians into giving up their guardianship. Well, if you know anything about a Drac, that's not going to work, And the Dracs, while they may not be, I'm sure they don't. I'm sure they're not stupid at any level. Very, very far from it. But while maybe they don't have the same intellectual capacity, who knows? I don't know. That's just a surmise on my part. As the Anu, or the they certainly have the bulk. Might is right. They're the big guys in the playground. So the Anu were playing a very dangerous game, poking the bear, as it were. Um, and lots of insults and skirmishes and things went backwards and forwards as this mind virus took hold, this victimizer virus took hold. And then the Anu went to the Elohim High Council and said, you need to do something about the Dracs. You need to get rid of them. They're a dreadful race. They're causing all these problems, blah, 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 blah. And they petitioned the council basically to wipe out the race and then give them the guardianship of Stargate 10. And the Elohim didn't give them the response they wanted. They actually said to them, go and look in the mirror. You are the problem. So the Anu went away furious and vowing revenge, and the rest is history. We go into the history of the Lyran Wars, the fallen consciousness of both the Anu and the Draconian races, the destruction of Stargate 12, all sorts of things like that fell out for it. But we're not here to tell that particular tale at the moment, so that's for another day. But that's the basic outline of it. There's a lot more within that, but that's the basic outline of it. And I hope you've kind of followed me. It took me a bit of time to put it together, but I hope I've expressed it in a way that's been accessible. So I think Felix is going to talk to you a little bit more about the structures and things like that.
That was really well put together. Like it was cohesive, it made sense, and yeah, well done. Yeah, I've got nothing else to add on to that part of it. The war side of things, Saira's a fantastic historian. When it comes to any kind of history, actually, and it's very, very interesting to hear her speak. I was saying to a friend actually the other day that I could listen to you talk all day. And I think that was the reason why he got the Shine seminar tickets, was because of that. So the documents that we're going to show you are actually Ashayana Dean's documents. So this one, the MCO Freedom Teachings, I don't know what that one's from, but that's one of the documents. And then this one, let me get rid of that one. I don't need that one at the moment. This one is called Exploring the God Worlds. Again, Ashayana Dean's, and this is her structure of our universe, our Ekavekas, and then going up into the highest point of God Worlds as she perceives it to be. So,
can I just interject here and say to people, if you find this confusing, you're not alone.
Oh, absolutely,
yeah. Trying to get my head around all the detail of this fries my brain frequently.
Absolutely. So this has taken me a long time to integrate myself as well, and I'm still doing it, because from my trip to the Stargate in Sarasota, which ran in tandem, probably about a month apart with Saira's one. She went to Montsegur, I went to Sarasota, and after she made me aware of what she was getting, I was then made aware of the healing that is taking place within the multiversal structure, and then into the God world structures, because everything has a cause and effect from down here to up there. But first, we're going to start at just looking at our universal structure, which is the 12 tree grid. Just one of these tree grid representations. And then it has a parallel, not a parallel, a higher heaven that connects with it. And this is the 13 to 24, we can say, dimensional fields there. And this would be the 15-dimensional matrix Vector quadrant, the higher heaven and the lower heaven of the particle-based consciousness. When we're looking at this one here, one full Vector, which is 4 universal quadrants or 4 trees of life, and one inner Eka God world. Sirius, stop scratching me, please. My little dog is just...
He wants in on it.
As soon as he sees my toes, he'll stand on top of my toes because he thinks that I'm going to give him a tickle with my feet. which sometimes I do. Probably his favorite thing because he's so tiny. He's just likes a soft tickle sometimes. So as I was saying, we've got the Vecca quadrant that we've just looked at there, the lower heaven and the higher heaven. Now to the right and top, we've got the parallel lower heaven and the parallel higher heaven. And the one beneath and to the left is a particle and the right is an antiparticle. So the one to the left and bottom is what is known as the mother matrix. And the one top and right would be the father matrix or the father arc current that runs through those. And together they run a mother father cosmic current, which then stabilizes the hirogamic union and creates balance within all of our universe. We've then got the inner Eckert Godwell, which I haven't dived into that bit yet. I don't fully understand that bit yet. But ultimately, one of these, or one Vecca quadrant, is then put into what's called an Akasha middle Godwell corridor. Now, 4 of these Akasha middle Godwell corridors then makes up one Akasha A spectra. One Akasha A spectra, or 4 Akasha A spectras, makes a what's called an Akasha R, AAH, which is the highest core God world structure according to Ashiana Dean. Okay, so where I was kind of taken with the healing side of it, I was brought into the Barenthasala matrix and connected to the Buddha Badara races, which are fallen, but
Borga Badara, sorry.
Borga Badara, not the Buddha Badara.
Yeah, and the Badara are one of the races that the Borga took over and assimilated.
Okay, so the Borga Badara. Okay.
I like Buddha Badara. There's something.
Yeah, I've been calling them the Buddha Badara.
I've got this vision of somebody with a fat little tummy. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I love that.
Yeah, no, to me it sounds more natural. It feels
it does. Yeah.
Whereas the Borga Badara doesn't sound very Christiac. To me, it doesn't feel Christiac, probably because of the history with the Borga. So I connected in with the Borga Badara, and the memories that were coming to me were that of the destruction that had happened to their matrix and to their consciousness, and it was basically the how they fell and their mindset towards the Borga who made them fall, because they didn't really want to kind of go down this route anyway. And then it went into a process of healing, and that would be within a middle Godwell corridor, one of their Vecca quadrants, as looked at in the other document. Their history came up to the surface, and as it was kind of processing through my awareness, I could understand that they just wanted peace. They didn't want to have to go down this route, and it was through their through the Borga's victimizer consciousness and dominator consciousness that started to kind of draw in the artificial mindset, the robotic, what's the word I'm looking for? Assimilatory kind of mindset in which it's kind of like seek, destroy, and engulf. That consciousness felt like it bloody frazzled me, to be honest. So as I was kind of processing that information, I was then taken into the Weezer one to look at that situation and how it was kind of interconnected. But the interesting thing was the next step up was showing itself to me. So the Akasha A spectra, which was kind of containing the information. Now, there is always a cause and effect, as something that will happen in a lower world will then reflect into the higher world. And through this vast amounts of wars, vast amounts of kind of digression, the disconnection to the crystal spiral that occurred started to warp the consciousness and block the channels of the cosmic fields to connect into our realms. Now, as the Borga in the Barenthasala matrix fell, their consciousness was replicating in the Akasha A spectra up there. However, this was dealt with in a very, very different way. The way that this was dealt with was as if it first came to me as like a kind of angelic AI light hybridized consciousness in which there was kind of sentient agreements and constructs in order to hold a faction of artificial nature within the Akasha A spectra, which was able to stabilize and not block but mitigate the damage from the lower parenthesala matrix, so it didn't throw it off piste and kind of make it fall, basically. So this hybrid intelligence that was kind of occurring in the Akasha A spectra was being used, and the analogy I was kind of receiving almost like as girders within a giant skyscraper structure. So an artificial girder that was programmed for light to stabilize the currents and stabilize the frequencies so it could still run and still work in its kind of format. Now, we've got to take into consideration the cosmic light levels that are kind of situated in a very, very high frequency. But if there is substantial damage to a world below, there will be some kind of implication or some kind of damage to that layer of the structure, the Akasha A spectrum. So they put this girder in place, which was then, or this kind of artificial structure in place, which was then kind of mitigating the information. And on a creational level, this was then producing what felt like hybrid templates or hybrid, like a hybrid template or a hybrid genome to kind of mitigate and resolve the fragmentation of the Borga and the Borga Badara. But then as this spread into the Wizala and spread into the Aquinas matrix, into our matrix, we've then got the DNA digression, which then they had a solution to create a hybrid template up there that followed a light path. And then that phases down, and then we're left with hybridization programs in the Akasha Middle God World corridor, which is then being relayed down into the Aquinas matrix, into the Borga Badara, the Parenthesala matrix, and into the Wizala matrix. So where these things have kind of fallen and replicated, there are processes and programs for it to restore itself. Whether they choose to do that is a different story. And that's a work in progress. But the interesting factor is there has been a massive shift in people. I know that I've been working with a lot of people to do this, and also for myself since about January, about claiming your body and expanding your light. Every time we've gone through a level of a trigger trauma or interaction that has created a threat and squeezed our consciousness out of the body, we're now being given an opportunity to affirm, I am claiming my body, I am expanding my light, drawing the life force back in the body, which is triggering out the reversal frequencies or the trauma frequencies to know that it's safe to come back in. Now, as this is correcting the inversion, we're claiming back our territory. This is sending a signal code out through the Aquinas matrix up into the our Vecca quadrant, and then going up into the Middle God World corridor, and then back into the Akasha A spectrum. So there's a cause and effect of the noble masculine coming back in, the Holy Father coming back in, as we're working to claim our space, which is then pushing back on these warring mindsets, these dominator mindsets that are trying to engulf and absorb everything, which is then pushing back into that higher structure. Now, the interesting thing is, as the that girder pillar of artificial organic hybrid intelligence that's sitting as a pillar to mitigate the artificial intelligence damage of the parenthesala, as they kind of pulse themselves out into an inversion or a reversal, that shakes the girder for which it has to go up, reprogram, but then they're also gathering data within that, is what I feel. Now, again, just saying that now, I feel like there's heaps more to unpack. But there seems to be some kind of creating methods and means to override the system and then finding ways to kind of reclaim back territories. I don't know whether they can do that with the Borga because it feels quite extensive, it feels quite extreme. But with other parts of it, I mean, specifically with our own one, we are claiming this back. So that also makes me feel like there is a way to do that within the Weezala. Whether this takes a very long time, I'm not sure. And then the Borga, whether that, what I'm seeing now is that that one just kind of implodes on itself like a supernova. But there are ways, means, and methods to kind of correct these things. This is what I'm being shown right now. So live from the newsroom.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it is, and let's just make the point that this is still coming through, isn't it? It's still very fresh, and there's a lot more to unpack about it. And there's a lot of detail I haven't gone into, haven't talked about, some of the races that the Borga have created. They've assimilated a lot of races into their kind of AI hive mind presence, but they've also created hybrid races, the Borga Badara being one of them. Yeah, so there's the Chanterelle, who are a vicious race again, with Borga genetics in them. And there's the Aquari, who are a fallen race from the Aquari, and the fallen version of them, which the Borga have taken down, are called the Equari with an E. So there's all sorts of other races and things like that out there, some of which are allies the Borga created as hybrid allies to themselves, and then other races they've just fully assimilated into themselves. And that's the fate of anything that comes within their range. And this is where the Christiat races are fighting back. And they've been dealing with this problem for billions of years now, trying to find ways around it and trying to find ways to mitigate the problems. And we are in the end game now.
We are indeed, yeah.
We're very much in the end game of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just interesting as you said that, then my mind just went to the Chris code corrections, and as we're kind of phasing out artificial intelligence down here, this is also going to have the impact up there as well.
Yeah.
And how that translates into the other God worlds, we'll soon find out. But this feels like the big push, the big squeeze to get this out. And then ultimately down the line, another factor that I really, really don't fully have the information on yet is the anti-source. And where we've got the source field, there is also a kind of replicated anti-source field, mirrored reflection of artificial intelligence that seems to be kind of scooting round and sending frequencies out to support or even create from the negative systems. That feels like it's kind of connected into what you've just said. But when I did come across it, it was humongous. It was so big. I was like, what the hell is this? And like I said, I still don't have enough data or information or intel on this just yet, but it does feel like it's not from our Ikasha R structure.
Yeah,
It feels like it is beyond our Ikasha R structure. So
and it's worth saying to people, I mean, it is tiring pulling this information through. And when you're touching into the fields of these really nasty fallen consciousness constructs, it's horrible, isn't it? It's mucky, really mucky. It's kind of and you're feeling like you're being covered in a sticky film, and you have to really protect yourself carefully before you do the work, but also be clean down and clean down and clean down afterwards.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that Ikasha AAH structure, when we're looking at the multiversal perspective, there will be I don't even know, multi-Akasha world structures, Akashas or Akasha R structures, because beyond from that, how it presented to me at the moment, and obviously there is still time for it to update itself and teach me more because this came in 2 days ago.
Mm.
Um, there seems to be a core source that powers up the Akasha R, but that feels like a fractal of the whole source, which was then being presented as omnisource. So we've got the anti-source and the omnisource. Omnisource is much higher up, then a couple of layers down, which I don't have the structure for just yet. I don't understand it yet. Um, Sits the anti-source, as well as the kind of there are tiers of source current that build, so it kind of like neighbors and replicates up into a higher structure and then a higher structure. So yeah.
It is, yeah, yeah. And in many ways, all of this, all of these structures, higher structures, in many ways, they're quite esoteric
Mm,
because our job here is very, very clear. It's to hold the crystal current.
mm,
It's to run and hold the Christos consciousness
mm,
on this planet, which is one of the central hubs of where this fight is being fought out um, between the Christiap races and the fallen races, headed by sort of. So we've got our own nasties on the planet, but behind them sits the Weezer, and behind the Weezer sits the Borga, really. So yeah, we. I hate talking really in terms of winning and losing, but actually it is a battle, and the Christiap races are taking down all of these structures that have been put in place to keep us digressed and to pull us into what's called their phantom matrix, which is effectively pulling us through so that we're assimilated into their phantom constructs and become part of their, feeding their ghastly machinery and everything. That we're out of the danger zone of that, but there's a massive cleanup having to go on, and as a consequence of that, it's almost the worst part of a war is the final part, because the other side has nothing to lose,
mm,
and so if they leave scorch earth behind them as they retreat,
mm,
it doesn't matter to them one bit.
mm,
So yeah, in some respects, we're in the most dangerous part of it. So yeah, we're tired. All of us are tired.
mm,
We've been, doing this for a long time here, and it's been draining because we've been living in very heavy, dense fields here, and we've been impacted by reversal energies and all sorts of nasty machinery and things. Now we're shaking loose of that, but we all go and we need a good holiday, but there isn't time for a holiday. We can't go and lie on the beach and recharge our batteries, because we need the energy. We need to find the energy from somewhere for that final push,
mm,
and that and just stand and hold and run ever higher frequencies, and follow the Christos codes, and use our collective creative powers to reimagine the world we live within and the reality we live within, free of all of this, and free for all of us to be who we really are, and to celebrate our uniqueness and our individuality in service to the whole, and create structures that serve that.
mm,
And that's where we need to be now. So, these histories, and everything that Felix talked about, we need to know and understand. It tells us what we're dealing with. It tells us what's been happening, but don't lose sight. Don't lose yourself in that, and not put your energy into what really is important at this time, which is the looking forwards.
Lovely. Well, thank you all so much for listening today. This has been a wonderful, wonderful session. I really enjoyed it. And if you want to just give us a follow, just our details are down below. And yeah, we'll look forward
Thank you.
to seeing you soon. Bye.
Bye.